Okay, let's just jump right in. Today, we are taking a fascinating turn down a truly massive historical path.
And this is really a deep dive into what's presented as a parallel narrative. We're not looking at a few lost pages here.
Not at all.
No, we're looking at a collection that, it attempts to provide a continuous, very detailed history of one specific group of people across more than 1,000 years.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. We're going to map out the historical overview presented in these Nemenhah records, try to identify the central figures.
Right.
And crucially, for anyone who's familiar with the Book of Mormon, we need to spotlight exactly where these two narratives might overlap or intersect.
It's ambitious, because the timeline itself is just so vast. These records span nearly 13 centuries. Yeah. Kicking off around 53 BC, so the time of the Nephite judges. And they chart the course of this society all the way through to their decline in the 12th century AD.
So it's a complete societal history.
It is, told through their prophets, their records, their daily life.
And to start that journey, we really have to look at one of the most famous voyages mentioned in the mainstream narrative, the Haygoth expeditions.
Yes.
The Book of Haygoth is what kicks this whole story off.
It does. It starts right around the 38th year of the reign of the judges, which is about 53 BC.
Okay.
And Haygoth's initial journey, it's important to note, wasn't just Nephites. He traveled with both Nephite and Ammonite families, all heading north.
And these weren't just settlers, right? They were actively looking for a new place to practice their faith, to get away from all the central conflicts.
That's the key.
Yeah.
And the Book of Haygoth notes their settlement in what is described as the Four Corners region of North America. This is where they really become a distinct people.
And they get a name.
They do. They're formally named the Nemenhah, around 23 BC. But here's a critical detail about this group from the very, very start.
Okay.
They weren't building large, exposed cities. By 16 BC, Haygoth's record shows them actively moving into mountain strongholds.
So early on. Why?
To avoid the influence of robbers, the lawlessness that was already gripping the mainland southward.
That immediately sets up this theme of, intentional isolation.
Yeah.
Preservation.
It defines their entire history, really.
And we can't talk about that early culture without bringing in a truly unique figure who helped cement their sacred ways.
Shito-Goha.
Ah, yes. Shito-Goha is this powerful example of cultural integration. The first book of Shito-Goha describes him as a Lamanite warrior.
A warrior who actually fought against Captain Moroni, the Captain Moroni.
The very one, before he had a spiritual conversion, joined the Ammonites, and then later sailed north with Haygoth.
So you have this warrior's perspective, but he embraces this new, more peaceful, consecrated way of life. Exactly. And the records he kept are just invaluable. They're basically the cultural manifesto for the early Nemenhah.
What do they cover?
Oh, everything. His first book details the sacred customs he observed among the Ammonites and then adapted. So, protocols for marriage, raising children, how they practice baptism, Sabbath worship, and their unique system of governance.
And we have to pause on that system of governance because it is so unlike anything discussed in the mainstream narrative.
It really is.
They adopted a form of governance that was led by mothers.
That detail is a massive differentiator. Think about it. If your society is defined by high priests and military leaders, what does it mean to have a system where governance, judicial, moral, maybe civil, is formally in the hands of the mothers?
It changes everything. It suggests a very decentralized, community-focused life.
Almost matriarchal. And that might have been the key to their survival through all the chaos.
That's a powerful thought. And the timeline for Shito-Goha is also key. The second book of Shito-Goha.
Right, that one covers his 7 years as Haygoth's counselor for the northern expeditions. It puts him right there at the very beginning, before 53 BC.
So he helped organize the whole thing.
He did, before returning to the land southward, just before Haygoth's final departure. He was a bridge figure, really, connecting the whole northern expansion back to the core.
Okay, let's move forward in time. Let's go to that pivotal era leading up to and right after Christ's birth. This is where the overlap with the big prophets from the Book of Mormon becomes incredibly concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start with Hagmeni.
Hagmeni is monumental. His record, the Book of Hagmeni, spans from 29 BC to 4 BC. He was ordained prophet and high priest by Nephi himself.
Wow. By Nephi?
Yes. And he discovered and began working with Jaredite records, much like Ether did later on.
But the event that makes his record so critical is his personal testimony of Christ before the Advent.
He records a detailed conversation he had with Christ in the temple, around 5 BC.
That's incredible.
And it's compounded by another fact. Samuel the Lamanite, famous for his prophecies in Zarahemla.
The one on the wall.
That's him. He didn't just disappear after his mission. Hagmenia's records confirm that Samuel the Lamanite actually sojourned with the Nemenhah after he left Zarahemla.
So it was like a sanctuary, a place for prophets who had completed these turbulent missions.
It seems that way. It gives Samuel a final place where his message was received and believed, which is, a powerful contrast to his experience in the main cities.
But the most poignant overlap comes right after Hagmeni's death.
Absolutely. The record of Son and Pet. It notes that 1 month after Hagmeni died, so around 1 BC, the aged prophet Nephi arrived.
The son of the original Nephi, the one who gave up the judgment seat.
That very one, the aged prophet came north. And Son and Pet details why.
Why did he go?
Nephi taught the Nemenhah about the specifics of Christ's birth, the signs, and he spent his final years among them. His ultimate task was ordering and organizing their records.
Their records.
The complex Nemenhah records, before his death around 3 or 4 AD.
Just think about that legacy. The man who held the plates, who ordered his own people's records, saw the birth of Christ, then spent his final days preserving this northern branch's history.
It legitimizes the entire archive in a powerful way.
And of course, this all leads to 33 AD. They were direct witnesses.
Yes. The record of Ugu is dedicated entirely to this moment.
What does it say?
Ugu records the catastrophic 3 days of darkness and explicitly notes that the Savior's voice was heard by the Nemenhah people during that time. They were preserved.
Because they were righteous.
That's what the record says. But here's the crucial element. Christ didn't just speak to them from afar.
He appeared to them.
The record states Christ appeared directly to the Nemenhah, and he set Ugu apart as prophet and appointed 12 apostles among their people.
So just like at Bountiful.
Exactly. It establishes the Nemenhah not as some peripheral group, but as a fully functioning, self-contained, divinely sanctioned branch of the early church.
So once Christ established that structure, the Nemenhah had to organize their sacred practice. This brings us to their doctrinal material, specifically about the temple.
Right, so we turn to the temple writings of Ugu and the Book of the High Place.
The High Place, that's what they called their temple.
Yes. And these aren't just, blueprints or histories. They're instructional guides. They outline the principles and ordinances taught to people before they were allowed to enter.
So it's a manual to ensure they were absolutely prepared and understood the covenants they were about to make.
Precisely.
What's the most, doctrinally striking detail Ugu records about this preparatory teaching?
The required understanding of the relationship of Heavenly Father and Mother.
Heavenly Mother.
Ugu makes it clear that grasping this dual relationship was essential for understanding the nature of their covenants. That is a theological concept that resonates deeply with many today, but to see it documented as a core early requirement, it's striking.
That one detail alone gives you so much insight. So how did this play out in their community life then?
We're moving into the period of peace. Around 58 AD, we have the Book of Manti.
Manti's book chronicles the time when the 3 Nephites visited the community.
The 3 Nephites came.
They did, which resulted in an expansion of the high place. And Manti records the specific teachings of Timothy, one of the 3, who focused heavily on temple covenants, their consecrated way of life, and detailed instructions on how the law of consecration was supposed to function.
So consecration wasn't just a spiritual idea for them. It was the documented daily mechanism that structured their entire civilization after Christ's visit.
And it clearly worked. We see that continuity centuries later. The Book of Nemenhah, written in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, explicitly says their enduring success and peace was because of their strict adherence to God's laws, and it singles out the law of consecration.
But that record is also a warning, isn't it? It is. Nemenhah was clearly aware of the outside world. He forewarns of a future decline and mentions the great divisions already happening in the land southward. He even says he was aware of figures like Mormon and Moroni.
So they weren't in a vacuum. They were watching the tragic decline of the main Nephite nation from afar.
Which brings us to the beginning of their own long arc of decline and, preservation, starting around the mid-2nd century.
Where we see records like the Book of Shimlei.
Shimlei, who was Manti's son, started writing after 145 AD. His work is a retrospective. He's looking back, recounting the history of Hagoth's lost son and his people.
As things get difficult in the present, they look back to their foundational stories.
To reinforce their identity. Exactly. And as the centuries roll on, we encounter a figure whose continued ministry is a powerful counterpoint to the traditional narrative of solitude.
Moroni.
Moroni, the record of Moroniah, identifies the author as Moroni. This record was written 38 years after the Great War.
So 459 AD.
Around then, yes. And he details his continued work, noting his progress in adding ether's abridgment around 495 AD. This places Moroni in regular contact with the Nemenhah.
A righteous, established community, long after the conventional narrative implies he was totally alone.
It's an immense claim. If the Nemenhah community was a spiritual refuge, it gives us a context for Moroni's ability to keep working on the plates.
It suggests he wasn't always isolated. He was connected to a dedicated remnant.
It definitely changes the landscape, and that connection continued. The Book of Shehanaya Ekektim records the Nemenhah's major relocation from the Mentina Valley in the late 5th or 6th century.
And they weren't fleeing armies.
No, they were specifically moving to preserve their unique, consecrated ways from the rising influence of other, less faithful groups. They prioritized their cultural integrity over geographic comfort.
This theme of proactive preservation just keeps coming up. It defines their final centuries.
It really does.
Yeah.
Around 765 AD, we get the Book of Nemenhah. Nemenhah is actively working to seal the archives. Because of changing times, families were starting to leave the valley, presumably assimilating into other cultures. He was recognizing the inevitable decline of the whole society.
Even if pockets of faith remained.
Right, and those pockets did persist. They established new cities they called Mini-Surit. And that's where we get another amazing connection.
Tell us about Mini-Surit.
The Book of Mormon, written in the late 8th or 9th century, details the establishment of these cities. And it records a visit from 2 of the 3 Nephites, Nephi and Mathani.
Still ministering.
Still ministering. They came to council with a great council of these new cities. It shows a continuous, if dwindling, spiritual support system.
Wow.
And the history continues right up to the end of the first millennium. The latest records are the Book of the Generations of Mini-Surit, written by 4 different authors spanning the 11th and 12th centuries.
What was the main challenge these late-stage authors were grappling with in the 12th century?
Applicability. Their writings focus entirely on that. They were debating how to apply the ancient law of consecration and all those foundational laws from Haggoth and Nephi to their current, greatly reduced circumstances.
It's the final struggle of a faithful people.
Trying to maintain covenants in a world that no longer supports them.
So, if we synthesize this entire narrative, what we're left with is this detailed, cohesive, and remarkably long history of a group that maintained an active connection to foundational Book of Mormon figures.
Haggoth, Nephi, Samuel the Lamanite, Moroni, the 3 Nephites.
For almost 13 centuries.
And the history doesn't just feature those names. It centers on core doctrines that define that early Nephite period. The law of consecration as a functional system, temple ordinances, specific tenets like teaching about Heavenly Mother in their temple prep.
Oh.
It's the story of a faith that survived by going north and living these strict, consecrated lives.
So what you've gained today is a detailed map of this parallel history, who the key characters are, how they fit into a timeline you're familiar with, and the specific doctrinal practices that define their civilization.
From governance by mothers to the continuous practice of consecration.
Right.
And this deep dive really spotlights the absolute priority they placed on preservation long before any final destruction.
What do you mean?
The second book of Panatan specifically mentions an innovation by Paul Shemuel. He created mobile records.
Mobile records.
Records designed to be easily moved and transported. And another man, Paul Sibyl, his work was in establishing libraries and genealogies as their society began to shrink.
So as you reflect on this narrative, consider this. What does that emphasis on physically preserving knowledge, not just sealing up plates, but creating libraries, genealogies, and these mobile records for relocation, what does that tell us about their ultimate priority?
It suggests that the continuous transmission of knowledge was perhaps even more crucial to them than the survival of any single geographic community.
So their story and their covenant relationship could endure into the future.